Thank you, Marjorie. And also thanks to you and Sheila, Vicky, and the entire USEA team for, number one, inviting me, but also for carrying on Barry's important mission. I am going to share a few slides. Pictures are always better than a bunch of words, so let's give it a shot here. And I trust you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Great. So a quick state of GTI at the moment. We are healthy, we're busy, and we're highly motivated and highly capable of contributing to the global energy transition. That's sort of the state of our business right now. And as one of our collective friends, I'll paraphrase him here, Dr. Ernie Moniz, former DOE secretary, said, as we strive to get to net zero by 2050, we have to recognize that many of the technologies needed to get there don't exist yet. So that's a key message. And that's where GTI and organizations like us, including EPRI, come in to develop the technologies and the pathways that enable economy-wide decarbonization. So one of those pathways that we'll talk about today is hydrogen. And I'll highlight some of the work that's underway at GTI to convert the promise of hydrogen into a reality. And yes, there have been several cycles over the last few decades of hydrogen hype. And at GTI, our research dates back to the 60s as we looked at the early stages of the hydrogen economy. So despite the numerous peaks, though, the hydrogen economy never really took off. This time, it's different. Famous last words, right? But why is it different? Well, the key driver is different. It's bigger. It's more urgent. Increased global attention on climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions drives a critical need to develop and deploy low carbon technologies at a rapid pace and at an unprecedented scale. We're also witnessing market changes that signal an irreversible move, a trend to lower carbon energy systems. And a global race, make no mistake, is underway. National governments around the world are investing in clean technology innovations to maintain the competitiveness of trade-exposed industries, to generate new areas of competitiveness, and to stimulate their local economies. Corporations worldwide are accelerating their commitments to carbon neutrality, the net zero, if you will. And much innovation is needed to create clean, cost-competitive solutions for the market. Step change improvements implemented at scale. In other words, disruptive innovation. A number of countries are counting on hydrogen as part of their national decarbonization strategies amidst increasing overall clean energy investments. IEA did a recent analysis of 2020's energy research budgets, and it found that research budgets for member nations increased by 6% last year, even in the midst of a global pandemic. And about 95% of that, more than $20 billion in these IEA countries, are being invested in low carbon energy technologies, with the greatest increase in spending on hydrogen, up 20% year over year. The US needs to keep pace. Research by Columbia University indicated recently that US government investments in clean energy innovation is about $9 billion a year. That's huge. It's also only about 10% of defense research spending. So to generate that innovation that's going to be necessary to decarbonize our economy and to remain competitive globally, they recommend doubling that by 2025. So in many respects, the private sector is leading the way with scores of commitments over the last few years to reach net zero or similar targets, being driven by stakeholder guidance, regulatory directives, and other drivers. A big trend, very fast coming, and sure to be continued as the months and years go on. As far as hydrogen production costs, delivered cost of hydrogen, are we yet reaching an inflection point on costs? Probably not yet. Green energy, green hydrogen is expensive, but it is anticipated to improve dramatically. So here are some cost estimates comparing some of the cleaner alternatives of hydrogen production to sort of the base case on the far left, that steam methane reforming with no carbon capture of hydrogen, which gets you down to about $2 per kilogram. Blue hydrogen with carbon capture and green hydrogen from renewable energy resources are higher at this point. But what this chart reflects, between 20 and 2030, a range of applied the cost of carbon in the range of $50 to $60 per ton, and embedding that in the production cost. And what you see, it starts to bring in the blue hydrogen, which is the traditionally produced with carbon capture, and eventually, as we get out in further years with technology improvements, cost competitive, cleaner hydrogen alternatives. And this focus on hydrogen production cost reduction is one of the key areas of focus on the Low Carbon Resources Initiative that was referenced a couple of times by Karen and Arshad earlier today, that EPRI and GTI are leading along with the industry. So there's a lot of work to do, particularly in this decade. It's a critical decade to prove out concepts, demonstrate technologies, and create demand for low carbon gases and low carbon fuels across the economy. What I wanted to highlight now in just a few minutes are some of the key projects that GTI has underway right now. And let's start with supply, reducing the cost of green hydrogen production. And this is a project that's being demonstrated in the UK, that's in the process of implementation right now. A technology called the compact hydrogen generator offers a cost-competitive alternative to traditional steam methane reforming. It produces high-quality steam, eliminates the need for a water gas shift reactor, and also costly amine systems to separate the CO2. So it potentially reduces the operating cost, the investment cost, and operates at a higher efficiency than current technology. So when you combine something like the HYPER project with new turbine technologies, and you move it to industrial scale, it's going to yield near zero carbon emissions for power generation. So our involvement in the HYPER project will include demonstrating this compact hydrogen generator at our research facilities in the Chicago area, producing high purity hydrogen. Here's a GTI technology-based spin-out company. It's another way to get technology into the marketplace. It's called SUNGAS Renewables, and we launched it in 2019. It's based on a long-established GTI technology called UGAS, and it provides gasification and related downstream technologies that convert organic wood waste into renewable syngas, producing low-carbon gas and liquid biofuels, and also reducing the adverse effects of waste products on the environment. Over the past 40 years, hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested to develop, perfect, and deploy what is now incorporated into the SUNGAS technology. And it's already in operation in plants around the world, Europe and China. So SUNGAS offers an alternative pathway, a possible pathway, to get renewable hydrogen into the market, both through technology advancement and also commercial solutions. Let's talk about another commercial solution potentially. Let's go to Texas. This is a hydrogen framework study. It's a multi-party effort. You see some of the project partners there from industry, the energy industry, industrial firms, and even hydrogen producers. To demonstrate the viability of renewable hydrogen opportunities across Texas, but with a focus on the Port of Houston. So this project is going to look at several dimensions. Number one, evaluating and analyzing the integration of Texas wind power with natural gas resources and infrastructure. It's going to develop an actionable framework for the Port of Houston to deploy stationary fuel cell power and also hydrogen-fueled vehicles. And it's also going to look at ways to increase the resiliency of the power grid with low-emission on-site power generation using hydrogen or natural gas hydrogen blends as the fuel. Let's move to a very important state for GTI and a vanguard of energy technology development worldwide, and that's California. So over the last 20 years, GTI has led a partnership that brings together industry, government, and academia in the state of California to enhance commercialization of fuel cell electric vehicles, stimulate hydrogen production, and also build out the hydrogen fueling infrastructure. 20 years ago. At that time, it was an interesting side initiative for us. But now, with the global pressures to address climate change, it's become a critically important vehicle to promote clean transportation. This time, indeed, it's different. So we in the energy industry face a challenging, yet energizing, highly motivating future. One that's going to require major decarbonization efforts and successes economy-wide. It's going to take all of us, and it's going to take our global peers to meet the challenge, probably and arguably the challenge of our working lifetimes. And we look forward to working with all of you to bring about that disruptive innovation that's so sorely needed. So I thank you for your attention, and I welcome, Marjorie, any questions that you might have.
David, thank you so much for your presentation and emphasizing the need for technology and the global role of hydrogen. We don't have much time, but I do want to ask one question. I'm interested in knowing, is GTI considering other technology pathways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions besides hydrogen?
Oh my goodness, yes. There are multiple pathways for that, up to including methane reduction initiatives that was mentioned earlier, the energy efficiency broadly, across the industry, and even other advanced technologies, again, some of which were mentioned earlier today, such as negative carbon technologies, either using renewable resources, such as biomass, or even a direct air capture of CO2 from the air and conversion of that CO2 into other valuable chemical products.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think, fortunately, I have one more time for one more question, if my clock is right. How do your subsidiaries strengthen the GTI enterprise?
They're important. As a not-for-profit at our highest level, we do public benefit research on behalf of the general public and the industry. The for-profit subsidiaries that do energy efficiency and even launch new technologies such as SUNGAS that I referenced are a way directly of getting that into the marketplace. By being for-profit, it enables them to attract outside capital that are necessary to scale up technologies and enhance their commercialization. So they're part of the total package to not just develop technology, but to drive those innovations into the marketplace. That's where our for-profit subsidiaries come into play.
Wonderful. David, thank you. We've ended right on time. Thank you again for your participation, your comments, and taking the time to be with us this afternoon. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure, as always. Thank you, Marjorie.